We Need Each Other is a podcast about the importance of human interaction. It provides reminders that we are not intended to live in isolation. Human beings need each other. The things about another that pisses you off and the things that take you over the moon are all opportunities to see through another's eyes, recognize their intrinsic value, and then look more deeply within ourselves to find the love that's always there. Here we are, another episode of We Need Each Other. We need each other. People, understand we do not live in a world alone in isolation. We need people. We need each other. We need to hear other people's perspectives. We need to learn from other people's perspectives, come together and have some kind of a common understanding, even if we don't agree. And so this man here, this is an interesting story. I knew his name and didn't know why I knew his name. We just figured out why I do. But let me tell you about Wes Hall. Wes Hall is an author, educational consultant, radio personality, and the president CEO of the National Young Men of Color Leadership Initiative Foundation. Mr. Hall is currently contracted with the Los Angeles Unified School District, where he co-created the Young Men of Color Initiative that services the entire district. In 2018, the Los Angeles Clippers basketball organization awarded Mr. Hall their Community Heroes Award for his outstanding work empowering the lives of young men of color. In 2001, Black Enterprise magazine selected and featured Mr. Hall in their nationally published magazine and deemed him a success-spurt. I love that. As a radio personality, he has broadcasted in some of the top markets in the country, including Oakland, San Francisco, Norfolk, Virginia, North Carolina, and Los Angeles. Mr. Hall has authored 4 books: You Are the Money for Teens, Jack and the Sly Fox, and I Raise My Hand, Leadership for Little People. His new book, How Black Boys Learn, is scheduled for release fall of 2021. Mr. Hall is a former Aspen Scholar and former Arthur Vining Davis Fellow. He recently created the National International Young Men of Color think tank, an entity designed to bring together men from all over the world committed to improving the lives of young men of color. Welcome, 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 Wes Hall.
Thank you, sister. I appreciate you.
So we just discovered, because I kept, he looked at me and he said, "You look familiar." And I was like, "I know your name." We discovered he interviewed me a long, long time ago when my book, Resurrecting the Muse, came out on his talk radio. Yeah, so here we are, hooked up again. And I saw him on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I find all kinds of amazing things that are happening on LinkedIn. And saw what he was doing with the Young Men of Color think tank. Mm-hmm. And I just was like so excited that someone is taking our young boys of color under their wings, because we'll have another different kind of world one day, because of it. So, first of all, will you tell me, what is the Young Men of Color think tank? Explain.
Yeah, well, we've been doing conferences for Los Angeles Unified School District for quite some time. And we come together and empower our boys. We have all kind of men from all over the world that come and speak power into our young men. But it's a one-time offering per year, right? So after we did the conferences, we decided to do some village mentoring programs around the district. And so we have group adult mentors that go into school sites and empower young men and share information, knowledge, expertise with our young boys, so they can, for many of them, they don't engage with positive adult role models in their lives, right? So how can you be what you can't see? Right. People don't understand that. I mean, most people, the radius of a person's life on a day-to-day basis is within 5 or 10 miles from where they live. Mm-hmm. Many of our kids who are living in Compton and Watts have never been to the Staples Center. Mm-hmm. Get lost if they go downtown. Get lost if they go to the marina. Get lost if they go to Santa Monica. So beyond the conference, we saw the power that we could have in young men's lives, and the light bulb goes off. And there's nothing like, especially for people who deal with young people, there's nothing like the light going off in a young person's eyes. They get it. They come alive. They feel empowered, and their lives change. So beyond the conference, I wanted to do something, because this year the pandemic did something we didn't experience. We didn't
Yeah.
anticipate.
Expect.
We didn't anticipate the fact that heretofore most of our men came from LA. Well, with the
All
pandemic,
right.
we were able to bring it in from
Everywhere.
around the
Yeah.
country and around the world. We had
Mm-hmm.
men from Nigeria, from Ghana that came in. Of course, we had our powerhouses from here in LA, like Judge Eric Taylor, the
Mm-hmm.
presiding judge over Superior Circuit Court. And then we had Dame Dash who came in. We had Khalid Pinkett, who
Mm-hmm.
is the executive producer of Cobra Kai, Jada Pinkett's brother.
Yes.
He
Yes.
came in. And then we had Harvey Levin from TMZ. He came and shared with our boys. So we had all these men that came together. And I decided, I said, you know what? We're not going to let go of you guys. We're going to hold on to you and we're going to create a think tank, right?
Mm.
A think tank designed to advocate on behalf of young men of color.
Yeah.
To identify the strategic challenges, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's education, whether it's law and legal, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
finance, entrepreneurialism. We're going to dig deep into these challenges. And each subgroup is now going to come up with 3 assessments as to what they think are the critical needs for young men of color.
Oh,
Then we're going to
wonderful.
our first meeting, as a matter of fact, is tonight at 4 p.m. That's why this show is so faded.
Yeah.
The first meeting of our think tank is tonight. And so and the men are excited, right? Now, here's my challenge. Though, Francisca. I've got the ladies calling me, right?
Well, what about us? You don't need to hear from us, right?
I've
I'll
got
be
the
one of
ladies.
those.
Right. I've got the ladies calling. Wes
Mm-hmm.
Hall. What about the women in the think tank? I said, sister, we would not leave you out. As a matter of fact, prior to doing the Young Men of Color Conference, we did the Young Women of Color Conference.
Mm.
So in November of last year, we had over 100 women from all around the world who serviced
Mm.
our young women. So Dr.
Wonderful.
Brenda Manuel is over the Young Women's think tank. I'm doing the
Mm.
men. She's got the women. Now, I did get one of my sisters who emailed me yesterday. It says, Wes, I hear you trying to put me with the women, but I want to be with the men. I want to be with the youth. I want to be repairing the young men. So I got a little bit of a challenge there in terms of, do you integrate them? Do you bring them all together with the women and the men inside, or do you keep it gender specific? Do you have the men work on the boys and the women work on the girls, or do you blend
And
them?
then switch.
I
And
don't
then
know.
switch.
See, this wasn't anticipated, friends. We didn't think about this. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
think that the women would want to be, helping the young men, or the men wanting to help the young women. They were just gender specific. But the world we're growing up in now is a totally different world.
Well, that's absolutely true.
Right.
What are the ages of these young people?
They're from 12 through 18. So basically through middle school through seniors in high school.
That's interesting because that's the age of people that I used to work with some years ago when I lived in Denver, Colorado. I used to mentor teens, and it was boys, girls, every ethnicity of all. It started off with here's how it actually started. I went into my daughter's bedroom to take some laundry one day.
Uh-huh.
My oldest daughter was 16 and had a job in a car, and her CD case was spread open, and she had these parental advisory CDs that I didn't give her permission to have. And I was like, so you can tell her that she can't do that and she'll go underground, because she's going to do what she's going to do. She's got a car, her own money. Right. And then I decided I wanted she and her sister, who's 3 years younger, so her sister was 13, to invite their friends over. And we just started talking, because people are afraid of that age group. People are afraid of, and they're the most amazing people who have their own mindset, that can be guided and can guide you too. So it's wonderful what you're doing. Personally, if you want my personal opinion, it's not my business, but I think it would be good at some point to switch. To take, to know that this is what we're doing, but it's also good for the young men to hear from women.
That's true.
And it's also good for the young women to hear from men.
Absolutely. Also. We had that at one of our conferences, our female conferences. I, along with Ron G, as a matter of fact,
Oh, okay.
we were the only two men at the female conference for the girls. And it was interesting because when he and I got up and spoke, one thing people don't realize is girls who don't grow up with dads still want to have that protective male energy in their life. I recall I used to do a training with young women, and I had like 20 girls that came into my classroom at a school. And when they first came in, I noticed they had their halters down, they had the short Daisy Dukes on. But after about 2 weeks with Mr. West, because when you came into Mr. West's class, I would look you straight in your eye. I didn't care what you had on, and the way I spoke to the young girls, it was like a father figure, right?
Yeah.
I noticed after about 2 weeks, the halters came up, or either shirts were put on, buttoned up, and the pants were. And what was also interesting is when the boys would try to look in the door, the girls would put their head down like they're studying, because dad's there. Because daddy's energy is in the room. My father figure is here. And it enlightened me to something very interesting. And that is, absent of that protective, sheltering father energy, a girl can succumb to the environment that she's in and act the way she's being treated, and that may not be her authentic character. So these things that we're doing in terms of, you see what I'm saying? So these things that we're doing are not only uplifting and empowering our boys, but also uplifting and inspiring our girls as well. And it's a most needed offering in this type of vacuum, in this type of space, because we're in a historic time in America, a time that's really for lightning to strike twice in our lifetimes, right? With the civil rights movement. And now with this current movement, we're in a space where we can really effectuate some critical change.
And you know what? We were born for it, Wes. That's why we're here.
Yes.
We were born for it. I'd like to know your background. So where are you from? Where were you born? What's your history?
Yeah, I was born actually in Cleveland, Ohio, but we left there very early. I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. My parents had family in Iowa. Would you believe it? And so I get it all the time. Look, Francisca, people will say to me, Wes, are there black people in Iowa?
That's the first thing I thought. There's black people in Iowa.
All the time. So there's like 30,000 black people in Des Moines, Iowa, right? And so I grew up in Des Moines, and then my fate would have it that I entered a radio contest when I was real young, like 15 years old, right? 50 words or less, why you should be the star DJ, right? I got my little 50 words together, submit them, and I won, right?
You have a great voice. You have a great voice.
And so I end up going to the radio station and all this stuff. And later, about maybe when I was 20, went to a nightclub, applied for a gig, and they let me be the DJ.
Awesome.
And so from there, a new radio station came to town. They heard about me. They auditioned me, and I got the afternoon drive slot on the radio show, right? And from there, went to Norfolk, Virginia, traveled all around the country doing radio, and met Les Brown. Wrote Les Brown a letter, the motivational speaker, world-renowned Les Brown, right? I wrote him a letter telling him how I'd been listening to his tapes and how he's inspired me. 3 weeks later, he calls me on the phone, right? And he's
like, wait, this is really Les Brown?
Right, yeah. You have the same response, right?
Yeah.
Because the phone rings, Francesca, and he says, can I speak to Wesley, please? I said, this is Wes. He said, no, Wesley, please. Now, wait a minute. This is my phone. I don't know who you are.
Yeah, right.
You're about to get cussed out. But there was something familiar about the voice. And so I said, this is Wesley. And he said, Les Brown speaking. I lost it, right?
Yeah, I bet you did.
But come to find out, I said, well, Mr. Brown, I know something about us. I said, our birthdays are on the same day. So both of our birthdays are on February 17th, right? And he says, well, there's something you don't know about us. He said, I have a twin brother. And he said, whose name is Wesley.
Oh,
and wow. So we met, and we traveled together, spoke, shared the stage together. And then when I wrote my first book, You Are the Money, He wrote the testimonial on the back, and
Mm.
it's just to this day he was on the radio. We shared just a great relationship. So that's what got me started in motivational speaking. So I ended up in
So,
education from there.
growing up in Iowa, were you in a very diverse environment in school and in your neighborhood? And
Diver- Diverse, yeah. If diverse is the only
it's
black
mostly
person,
white people, right?
if diverse is the only
Wow.
only only black person, but when I was in
Were
school,
there other cultures besides white people? Other
uh,
cultures?
no, there were at that particular time there may have been a smattering of black people. Like for instance, by the time I got to junior high, we may have had 20 black students out of maybe 500 students, right? But we were a very vocal minority. I ran for president of student council in
Mm.
middle school and won, right? Because my campaign committee was we're very popular. We're very popular in this particular school. But no, there wasn't much adversity. I mean, diversity at all.
Hmm. Yeah,
It
that's
was
kind of the
black and white.
environment I grew up in. I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
black and white.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Black and white.
But
Yeah,
but you but you learn but you know what about Iowa? The SAT. I think it was the Iowa SAT or ACT.
yeah,
That
that's right.
it
Yeah,
came it came from Iowa.
came from Iowa.
So
Never thought about that. Yeah.
exactly. So if you just barely went to school in Iowa, you were educated. If you barely went to school, right? You were really educated coming out of the Iowa system at an
Wow.
early part of academia. So I learned a lot being in that environment. And then when you grow up in the middle of the world, it's not as much of an accent, right? So a lot of times I'll go to different cities and I'll pick up the accent of that city, right?
Hmm.
And so it's interesting if I go to New York or if I go to, if I'm here in LA or whatever. But basically, you can kind of modify the accent when you come from Middle America.
I
Yeah,
get that. Yeah, I
yeah,
get that. I grew up in Chicago, and I have found that I've lived other places, and all of a sudden I realize I'm talking like them. I
right.
was like, what,
Yes, yes.
where'd that go? Where'd that come from?
Right. Chicago, Chi-Town, Windy
Yeah,
City. I'm
Windy
not sure if there's
City.
any place in America that the hawk is as strong and
People don't even
vicious.
understand, Wes. They don't
Woo
even
wait.
understand.
When that hawk comes around that corner in Chicago,
Talk about frostbite. Yeah.
right.
We don't even know what frostbite even means.
That's right.
So, did you have strong male mentorship in your life?
No, not particularly. Mine came from early on. My spiritual base, right? My aunt was a woman that if you spent the night at her house on Saturday, you were going to church on
Just
Sunday.
on
There was
Sunday,
there was no about it about it, right? You're going to church on
yeah.
Sunday, Aunt Bertha, and so
Bertha.
Aunt Bertha
I love
introduced me
it.
to right when I was about 13 and or 14, and I just had a deep experience spiritually, with God, and that
Hmm.
has impacted my life all the way through my life, and the things that I have been able to do through life has come through that blessing.
And isn't that the most important thing, really? Well,
It really is.
to me, it's
Yeah.
like there's nothing more important. There's
Well,
nothing more important.
especially when you're fated to do something powerful on the
Yes.
planet,
Yes.
you simply cannot do it alone. And you simply cannot get there without the assistance of the Father, because
Yeah.
there's some doors that people attempt to close, and He's the only one that can open them to where they
That's
can't
right.
be shut.
That's
Right?
right. That's
And there's certain altitudes that when you're really involved in mission work, there's some certain altitudes that would be absolutely too frightening to
mm,
try to ascend to by yourself if you didn't
hmm
have some heavenly intervention.
that's exactly
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's and a lot of times, like right now, these new territories that we're involved in, there's a lot of different forces. They talk about we don't war with flesh and blood, but with powers and principalities. So there's a lot of different warfare going on around us all the time. And you have to be protected to navigate that. And you also have to have what's called witty inventions. Some of the things that we get that come to us, right? That there are flashes and nudges and
Yes,
those
yes,
sparks
yes,
of
yes,
inspiration, right?
yes.
And for those of us who are obedient, we move to that nudge. We move to that flash. We move to it like the think tank, right? The think tank is actually a part of that type of inspiration. Now, tonight we'll have about 30 men from all over the country, all over the world that will come. So imagine, Francesca, we have our own brain. It's almost like a boom box theory, right? Remember the big boom box?
Yes,
And it
yes.
took like 20 batteries to it took like 20 batteries to run the boom box, right? And so our brain is but one battery. So when you
Mm.
bring together a mastermind crew of people, right?
Mhm.
And tonight we have, like I said, about 30 men. So from my vision, another man adds his piece and another and another and another and another. And pretty soon now you have a mastermind group. And that's what the Bible talks about. If two or more are gathered in my name, then
Yeah.
I am in the midst. So imagine if 20 people, all like minded, are moving toward the same objective, right? How powerful that is. And yeah, it's an exceptional, there's exceptional results that come as a result of it.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. So, what was it that made you decide that you want that? How did you get this pull? What did the first pull look like to be this mentorship
Mhm.
person for young boys of color?
I think there's something that says that we teach people the things that we need to learn, right?
Hmm.
and and
Hmm.
and and so a lot of times our walk actually walks us into what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? And so our mess becomes our message, so to speak,
Oh, I love
right?
that. Our mess becomes our message.
Yeah,
I
our
might
mess.
use that quote just so you know, Wes.
Yeah, that's all yours.
Okay.
That's all you. Our mess. In other words, it's what we overcome and
Yeah.
how conscious we are in the overcoming is critical. It's not just overcoming; it's how conscious we are as we overcome. Like many people find themselves in a holding pattern, right? That means they're in a perpetual loop. They keep getting out of a negative situation only to get themselves back in the same negative situation somewhere else or with someone else, right?
Hmm.
So they weren't conscious through their overcoming. It's those of us who are conscious through that which we overcome that now we learn something that we can now share with someone else.
Yeah.
And what comes from the heart reaches the heart, right? So
Mm.
if I'm in the classroom with a bunch of students who've grown up in dysfunction, and I overcame dysfunction, I can still draw from that understanding of dysfunction and
Hmm.
speak a language to them
Hmm.
that they
Hmm.
recognize and adhere to instantly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Instantly. The
Absolutely.
rapport is instant. There's certain things you can't fake. You have to be. It's a state of being.
And I'm gonna tell you, young people at that age pick out the fake just like that.
Just like that.
Just
Um,
like that.
I
Hmm.
do some training on trauma informed instruction, social emotional behavior, and relationship building. And one of the things I talk about are two entities, microaggressions versus hypervigilance, right?
Mm.
So hypervigilance means that someone is on alert at all time for danger. Hypervigilance. They're hyper alert to danger because they grew up in an environment where you can be waking up out of your sleep with a belt or
Yes,
somebody
yes,
screaming or
yes,
somebody.
yes.
And then microaggressions. That means that you're trying to make a subtle reference to something negative that you're pointing toward me, a microaggression. So here you have a child who's hyper vigilant in the classroom with a teacher who's exhibiting microaggressions. And she's
Hmm.
thinking that this little kid is not experiencing this microaggression, but the child is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so you have to teach them through the how to now, one, understand that child is experiencing it, And that's why I said your mess becomes your message. So I experienced that when I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers, right, that were being subtle, or they attempted to be subtle in their insults, and putting me down and saying things that were negative toward me and about me and my possibilities. And I could experience that even if I couldn't articulate it, I felt it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you have to teach our kids that you're going to experience that. But what do you do when you experience that?
Yeah.
How do you, not necessarily adjust to it, but how do you function in it? So your mess becomes your message, in other words. And that's ultimately how I got here.
I'm curious your thought about this.
Hmm.
I'm
Thought
curious
about.
your thought about this. You say the teacher may say something that you experience in a way that she doesn't think you're going to experience it. Do you think it's her intention to make you feel the way that you end up feeling, or is it just her innocently being the white person that she was and not even recognizing what is coming out of her? Does that make sense, what I'm
Yes,
asking?
yes. I think it all comes down to perception.
Mm,
And it's almost like a person perceives you to be a certain way and then approaches you the way they perceive you. Like a man, for lack of a better analogy, a man sees you in a short skirt. Well, you're just, expressing yourself, feeling powerful today. This is the way you're expressing yourself. But his perception of the short skirt makes him say something to you that he would say to someone that he perceives as wearing the short skirt for a different reason. So I think
yeah.
the teacher perceives the child as less, or perceives the child as not being able to learn, or sees the child with a hoodie and has a perception associated with the hoodie, or hears a child speaking a certain way, broken English or Ebonics, and doesn't realize that the growth mindset means that intelligence is fluid. Intelligence is not static. That means intelligence is like a computer. A laptop comes already programmed to do certain things. That means a child comes to earth pre-programmed to learn. Okay. And it's
Mm-hmm.
only the teacher that prevents the child from learning because the child is
Mm-hmm.
pre-programmed to learn. So, in answering your question fully, I'm not certain that every teacher comes with a built-in inclination to insult, but the perception associated with that child and the lack of parental involvement and otherwise, the teacher then follows that particular perception, and everything comes forth from that. And that's why she acts on that perception and many times damages that child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I asked that question because I feel that it's in the situation that we're looking at in the world today and the transformation that is upon us that, you know, oftentimes, good white people, put it in
Hmm.
air quotes, good white
Hmm.
people who really care and want to make change, don't realize the perceptions that they have that are inside there that they're expressing and not realizing that they're expressing. Do you find that true?
Absolutely. And a lot of that, though, is also caused by the post slavery, uh, how would you call it? What the slave experienced upon being freed and now integrated into America without the 40 acres and a mule, without the land, without what they've given to other minorities who either came to America, were held in the Japanese encampments, and in other words, so we are probably one of the only races that is judged by what you would call our lesser or underdeveloped aspect of our culture, right? We are judged. We're one of the only cultures where they look out and paint the picture of us based on our underperforming assets, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not that they want to paint us as our doctors and our lawyers and our scientists and the brilliant aspect of the black community, and paint us as individuals who have come out of slavery and look at how high we have ascended all the way to the presidency of the United States and otherwise. We're painted by our George Floyds or by, whatever we would call our underperforming assets in our community. And so we're what you call, we're the air quotes of the good white person. That's the person who says, regardless to what you look like, what condition you are, I'm going to try to be liberal in my idea and help you the best I can. Well, you don't have to be liberal in your idea with me if I'm already succeeding, if I'm already at a level of excellence, if I already understand that my community wields $9 trillion in assets.
Mm,
And if I just kept that dollar circulating 10 times or 5 times in my community, that my
yes.
community would look night and day. You see what I mean? You don't have to be, I don't need the liberal hand to help me with what I already have. I just need to
Hmm.
know what to do with what I have.
Yes. Yes. And we need to know who we are and value who we are and walk forward from that. Do you
And,
have
and,
children of your? Go ahead. No, I want you to go ahead. Go ahead.
no, no, and that's it's harder than what it sounds.
Oh, it's so much
This
harder than what it sounds.
this conditioning that we undergo in America, that we have undergone in America, is real. We can never discredit what that conditioning has done. Even something as subtle as a police car getting behind you when you're driving is different
Absolutely.
when you're black than when you're white. That is a
Absolutely.
reality. The scientific studies that they've done to measure trauma that we suffer in a racist society is real. We can never underestimate that. Coupled with the fact that we are just now moving into an era of economics. When you talk about nation building, black people are very early in nation. It was 1968 with the assassination of Martin Luther King. So we're only
Hmm.
talking 50 plus years in terms of nation building, and we've been left to do it on our own,
On our
and many
own.
times and many times with hurdles that have been placed before us that have constantly kept us back. So I'm not on a pity party as much as I'm saying to understand becoming economically solvent in terms of black people, particularly. When you take that and contrast that against what we've come from and been through, we're in a good place. We can be in a better place. And then our white counterparts who step up to the pump are able to help us as we are going through now. This is the last part on this. This is a critical time in terms of our economic development with Biden in office. You see the diversity that he's bringing into his cabinet. You see the influx of money that's coming into America. You see them understanding corporations are making changes. They're making shifts. And now we, as the conscious black people, are able to come now in a fertile environment like this. And
Hmm.
any idea that you had for the betterment of the black community, black culture, you had better present it now because the
Yes,
ground is fertile.
that's right. That's
The
exactly
ground is
right.
fertile for those
Yeah.
ideas to come to fruition.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so many people, I think people are realizing that more and more and more, but we've been skipping a beat a little bit, not realize, because I've heard people say, well, we've been here before. Have never
No,
been
never,
here before, ever,
never, ever.
ever.
And that statement you made is so powerful because it's impossible to have been here before because we're standing on the shoulders of all of those who lost their lives heretofore, right?
Yes.
And when you take a look at this trifecta, you take a look at the pandemic, you take a look at George Floyd, and you take a look at the insurrection. For the first time, the inadequacies that many of us have been espousing came to the immediate front when you had the pandemic and you saw the health disparities show up so much in the black community with the pandemic. When you looked at George Floyd, and we had been talking about how terrible we've been being treated by the police department in so many instances. And then when we talked about racism and a different America for blacks and a different America for whites, the insurrection was a visual that will never ever be put away by America, to see that here you have a black man who can be walking away from an officer and the officer shoots him 7 times and paralyzes him in front of his children. But you can have white people beating officers with flagpoles and spraying them with deer spray, and not a gunshot is fired, with the exception of one for the woman who went through the glass to threaten the congressman.
Right.
But it forever left a different impression for America, and this time is different, as you say, than ever
Hmm.
before for Black
Ever,
America.
ever, ever. And it's the evidence of a shift that we're in the middle of.
Yes,
It's an
the
evidence,
cri- the, cri- the critical piece is though, are we awake enough to take advantage of the time?
yes, right. And so that's why you're there waking up people, and I'm
That's
there
right.
waking up people. I mean, that's
That's
why we're here. That's what we're intended to do. I am curious. Do you have children of your own?
No,
You
I
do.
do not have biological children. I have
Hmm.
so many children,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I do not have biological children. But
Hmm.
I have a lot of children.
Hmm. I understand that. When my children were in high school, I'd walk in the door, people go, "Mom, mom, mom."
Right, right,
I only had one child in two different high schools, and
right.
at the end of my youngest daughter's years in high school, one of the security guards went, "Oh, I thought you worked here." Because I was there so much. I was there
Right.
so much. And I have people now today that they call me Mama Fran.
Yep.
They're still my
Yep.
children, and I still am
Yep.
adopting more children. That's
Yeah.
just, the personality that we are, I guess.
Yeah. That's
And it's important and it's needed. Mm.
yeah.
Do you intend to have children one day of your own?
Oh
I'm
no,
curious.
no.
Just curious.
No.
You like,
I'm
I got
past that.
enough kids.
I'm past that point. I'm past that point. My young people. When you love them and they love you back. They give you everything you need, and so no, I'm past that time.
Mm, mm. Um, so what you're doing, you see it being beneficial for the world in what way?
Yeah, I mean, right now, America occupies such a dominant space in the world, whether it's culture, whether it's fashion, whether it's just the way we think. We are a free, quote unquote, free society. We are a beacon in many ways. And so what we have to do is prepare our children. When you want to invest in the future, you invest in a child.
Hmm.
It's amazing how many children come back and say, Mr. West, when you said this, and you know how the kids, they'll remind you of something you forgot, right?
Exactly, right?
Right, right. But I remember there was a teacher by the name of Miss Gloria, and Miss Gloria would always take time with me when I was about 15 or 16. And she said, if I had a son, he'd be just like you. And I came from the most dysfunctional environment, the most poisoned environment that you could come from. And I was so full of rage that I couldn't even hear what she was saying.
Huh?
But she kept saying it. She said, there's something
Mm-hmm.
special about you. And eventually I start letting a little bit of it in, right? And so I'm saying that to say that I am living proof that woman who invested in me helped produce who I ultimately became. And so when we plant seeds of the future in our children, then we are not just empowering their particular neighborhood or city or state region, but we're actually empowering the world because each child comes to earth with a purpose, with a design that he or she is supposed to fulfill a problem that people have been praying for. And it's how the answer of that prayer is housed in that child. And so if you have the privilege of coming in control of a world changer, right? And at that moment you plant a seed in that child needs a word in due season, so to speak. Then that
Mm.
child is able then to blossom. It's like the word education. The word education is derived from the Latin word educere, meaning to educe, meaning to draw forth, right? That means if you're truly educating someone, you're not shoving something down their throat, hoping that they regurgitate it A, B, C, D,
Yeah,
E, but
right.
you're actually stimulating them and drawing out of them what already exists within them.
Mm.
You see?
Mm.
And that's when we do that
Mm.
to our children, then we are truly educating them and pulling their purpose out so that they can go forth and not just change America, but
Mm.
impact and powerfully change the world.
That's beautiful. What, how important it is what you're doing.
Thank you.
And my grandson is 10. I can't wait till 2 more years when he can participate in your program also, because he's a
Yeah.
pretty amazing young man. He blows my mind.
Well,
He blows my mind.
we may have to make room for him. We have our diamonds. My God, when people think about children today, you need to understand that our children are growing up in the most technologically driven, and they are the most technologically informed children to ever be on the planet. Right? We grew up and there were three channels. There were three channels on TV,
Right.
and the TV went off at midnight. Right?
That's
Oh, say right.
right. Yes,
Right,
indeed.
right, right, and look, black and white before it was even color, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And you could actually make a sound effect when you hung the phone up on somebody and slam the receiver down. Our children know nothing of
Nothing.
that, right? Everything for them is high five, high speed. Everything is technological information era. So we have to catch up with them in
Mm-hmm.
training them. And so your
Mm-hmm.
10-year-old right now has as much information as we had by the time we were 25.
Exactly.
you
That's
know
right.
and so,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of times teachers don't know how to draw that information out of them, and many times the environments that our children find themselves in are not conducive to drawing it out of them. That's why it's
Mm-hmm.
imperative for parents to constantly put their children in spaces and places that are designed to draw the genius out of their child.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's a critical space that we occupy in terms of training our
Mm.
young people.
And I think it's important for our young people to understand history as well.
Yeah.
I had a person on the podcast who is a college student, and he would say he's a Latin descent, and
Hmm.
he said that he thinks that the problem with his generation is that their whole world is on a screen in front of them, and that
Hmm.
there's oftentimes they miss history, and so they're making decisions without being completely informed about every participant, every
Hmm.
part of, and I think all those pieces of the puzzle are important as well.
Oh,
So we learn
absolutely.
from each other. Mm-hmm.
Well, the challenge is that I'm not sure. Well, I am sure that the world has never seen a time such as this, right? Where things come and go so quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your cell phone, for instance, could become obsolete in a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything is
Absolutely.
moving. And the human mind is built in a way that it actually compartmentalizes information, because it is, for the first time, we're inundated with millions and billions of bytes of information on a daily basis. So the mind, we used to be 30 seconds before someone made an assessment of who you are. Now it's down to 3 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything is moving so fast that when you put history in, it has to be put in and emotionalized. Like, you have to have emotionalized content. Less the mind. Think about now. Everything is visual. Very few things are text driven
Yes.
because
Right.
people don't want to read text, right?
Right.
I mean, even when you text somebody, it's a U for you, YOU, and it's just a U.
Right.
Everything is
Right.
abbreviated because
Right. Right.
people are, and it's led to an anxiety based culture, right? It's an anxiety based culture. If you try to get on a website and it doesn't come up within 10 seconds, you're done with it. You're cussing it out.
Absolutely. Right.
You-
Yeah. Like, what's going on? Why is it taking so long?
why is it
Yeah. Right.
right?
Oh
So
my
you see,
God.
right? So we live in an anxiety based society where everything is moving fast, and so everything has to find a place. So that's why parents are so critical in terms of shaping historical content on the walls, where the kids in their rooms, putting it where they in the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere where they
Mm-hmm.
come across this information,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's subtle, making subtle impressions on the child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Opposed to trying to get them to sit down and read a book on it,
Yeah.
like
Right.
or something like that. You have to service them in the space that
That's
they
true.
understand.
That's something really important to keep in mind with our young
Yes,
people. My
it
my
really.
grandson had to write during Black History Month. He had to pick someone to write about, and he said, "I'm going to write about Serena Williams." And I was like, "Oh, well, then you'll have to talk about her sister." He's like, "She had a sister." Like, yes, you can't write about Serena and not talk about her sister, and you're going to research and find out who she was.
And well,
Yeah.
and that's a mistake sometimes we make. I was trying to be super cool in my classroom one day with my third graders, and I said, "Well, the rapper 50 Cent." And they just looked at Mr. West like, 50 Cent. And one kid said, well, who's 50 Cent? And
Wow, really?
the other kid put it like this, like it said 2 quarters and was serious.
Wow. Okay, 50 Cent still around, right?
Okay. But that I'm trying to say,
they've probably seen Power. That's 50 Cent.
Well, they may have, but the thing about it is what we anticipate that kids should know. Like you said, Serena has a sister. That everything is moving so fast for them that we have to actually speed up in terms of knowing how to teach them, how to engage them, how to speak their language. It's critical.
So there needs to be classes for parents, really, on exactly what you're talking about.
That's it. But parents, that's the whole challenge. I do something called the end game with our parents. And the end game asks a critical question. How far do you think you need to support your child? And how long is your vision for your child? Are you successful if you get your child to graduate from high school? Are you successful if you get your child enrolled in college? Is your success with your child making it through college? Or is your success with your child making it through college and working in their major? And it's very interesting. You see what I'm saying? Per whatever the vision is of the parent is where they start and stop support.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
And so you have to teach the parent how to support the child and have the vision for the child in whatever capacity you want that child to succeed.
That's an important point. Yeah.
It really is.
It really is. It's very important.
Because what you find is parents aren't there. It's not that parents don't want to be engaged. Many times what you find with a parent who had a bad academic experience, then they vicariously or they introduce that onto the child. Right. So whatever. So there's so many things that we have to train our parents in terms of how they see education, how they see access to it, and how they see training up their child and purposefully and intentionally moving their child through the academic space.
Yeah. That's why I say I was so involved as a parent and was always at my children's school, because I realized that a lot of other parents thought, well, they made it to high school. They're good.
Yeah, right.
And I'm
they're
like,
good.
Oh, this is a really critical time. I need to know what's going on.
Right.
I need to be a voice still in their ear, or something.
That's right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Just because they're tall doesn't mean they're grown.
Right.
Just because they're
so now that they're in their 30s, they just kind of slap my hand away. So.
Right. Yeah. They're at 30. You can't tell them anything at 30.
No.
At 30,
they tell you. They're telling you.
They tell you. They know it all at 30. Wow.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Well, God, Wes Hall, I'm so glad we were able to get together and do this. This is wonderful. I'm so excited about what you're doing. I'm so excited, truly, about what you're doing. It's extremely important. And the wonderful thing that you can now bring in mentors from all over the world. That's perfect.
Yes,
that's perfect.
Especially in a time such as this, right?
Yes.
In a time such as this, where little doors open into big rooms, and you have people. You see what I'm saying? You have people that come together on what appears as a spark, and now this thing you just don't. It's astronomical as far as it can go.
Yes.
So it's a pleasure talking with you as well. I'm glad to hear all the things that you're doing. Your platform that you're using. You're just doing God's work and just. Empowering people yourself and bringing people to know other people and giving people a platform to speak, which is very, very important.
Yes, and erasing racism.
Eracism.
Yes, absolutely. That's a big part of, we need each other is the name of the podcast. And it's an outgrowth of my, my nonprofit, because the idea is that if we could recognize the intrinsic value of every human being, there would be no racism.
No.
Racism was made up in the first place. There would be no judging people from the way that we do if we recognize that we may not even agree with them, but everybody has value and everybody has a perspective that's worth listening to. Absolutely. Yes. So thank you so much.
You're the right messenger for that. You are the
Okay.
right
Oh, good.
messenger.
All right. I'll take that.
Yes.
So when you start having women talking to the young guys, think of me.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you're definitely getting that call.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
Wes, thank you so much. And have a great conference tonight.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate you.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. All right.
Have a powerful day.
We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.